Tshelo bani ningacula umculo wethu lapho sohlangana khona kuzophela abantu.
Tshelo bani
Ningacula umculo wethu lapho sohlangana khona kuzophela abantu.
Good evening and welcome to the 15th Time of the Writer Festival. I'm your host for this evening and my name is Noxolo Malimba, Nox if you prefer. So to kickstart this evening's show is a musician who's a perfect example of what beauty can happen when you actually go beyond your own culture and embrace and enjoy someone else's culture. He is a Zulu sitar musician in the South Indian classical tradition, although he won't be playing his sitar this evening. Please welcome on stage Patrick Novo together with his accompaniment.
Kulunkulu wami Sai Baba Gagubona sai e putapati Gagubona sai e putapati Nabalandeli bahako Sai Baba Nabalandeli bahako Sai Baba Bekuthandazisa Nkosi bethi Allah Kulunkulu wami Sai Baba Kulunkulu wami Sai Baba mina nginenkinga baba Celungisize baba mina nginenkinga baba Celungisize baba Kulunkulu wami Sai Baba Kulunkulu wami Sai Baba Kulunkulu wami Sai Baba Gagubona sai e putapati Gagubona sai e putapati Nabalandeli bako Sai Baba Nabalandeli bako Sai Baba Bekuthandazisa Nkosi bethi Allah Bekuthandazisa Nkosi Beti Krishna, Bekuthandazisa Baba, Beti Rama, Beti Rama, Beti Rama. Thank you very much.
3 years ago, Chinese human rights activist, writer of 16 publications, and 2010 Nobel Peace Prize laureate Liu Xiaobo was taken from his home and arrested for the crime of inciting subversion of state power. His wife, a poet and photographer, was also placed under strict house arrest. As a part of the global movement for his release, this day, today, the 20th of March, is the worldwide reading of works by Liu Xiaobo. This great campaign was initiated by the International Literature Festival of Berlin and is one of which the Time of the Writer is proud to be a part. I'd like to welcome now on stage my colleague, Carol Gumede, to read a poem that Liu Xiaobo wrote to his wife shortly after he was arrested. Thank you, Carol.
To my wife who waits for me, nothing remains in your name. Nothing but to wait for me, together with the dust of our home. Those layers amassed, overflowing in every corner, you're unwilling to pull apart the curtains and let the light disturb their stillness. Over the bookshelf, the handwritten label is covered in dust. On the carpet, the pattern inhales the dust. When you are writing a letter to me, and love that the nibs tipped with dust, my eyes are stabbed with pain. You sit there all day long, not daring to move for fear that your footsteps will trample the dust. You try to control your breathing, using silence to write a story. At times like this, the suffocating dust offers the only loyalty. Your vision, breath, and time permeate the dust in the depth of your soul. The tomb, inch by inch, is piled up from the feet, reaching the chest, reaching the throat. You know that the tomb is your best resting place, waiting for me there, with no source of fear or alarm. This is why you prefer dust in the dark, in calm suffocation, waiting for me. You wait for me with dust, refusing the sunlight and the movement of air. Just let the dust bury you altogether. Just let yourself fall asleep in the dust until I return and you come awake. Wiping the dust from your skin and your soul, what a miracle. Back from the dead. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Indeed, for as long as all sorts of injustices are taking place around the world, artists can speak up against these things, and really it is a case of a luta continua, the struggle continues. The first panel this evening is titled Spaces and Places, with writers Shubnum Khan and Yewande Omotoso. This session is facilitated by Lindy Stiebel. After a 15-minute interval, we will head straight into our second session for this evening with Libyan writer Ibrahim Al-Khoni and Bahar Taher from Egypt, who sit in a panel titled When Does the Arab Spring Become Summer? And this session will be facilitated by Junaid Ahmed. For now, though, let's have Shubnum Khan, Yewande Omotoso, and Lindy Stiebel take to the stage. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for coming to this session of Time of the Writer. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this is the 15th Time of the Writer Festival coordinated by the Centre for Creative Arts, headed by Peter Rorvik. And I think that's a fantastic achievement in this particularly hard economic and academic climate. So you've preempted me and given them a round of applause. And I think thinking back on what we've just heard as well, today we feel the power of literature, whether it is far away or whether it is closer home. And tonight we're focusing on the power of literature by two young women, and it's my great pleasure to introduce them to you. I thought what I'd do is introduce them briefly, then they will read you an extract of their work to get a flavour, or give you a flavour of what they write. And then we're going to move into a discussion phase around spaces and places. And as usual, we'll try and give you a bit of time as the audience to have an engagement with your writers. So without further ado, let's introduce our writers. We have Shubnum Khan and Yewande Omotoso. Maybe big round just to warm them up too, and ourselves. Okay, so Shubnum Khan, as we know from last night, and we certainly know from elsewhere, is Durban born. She's very close to here. She has an honours degree in media studies, masters in English, and quite sadly, I think she went off on the media track more than the English track, but we'll forgive her that for a little while. She has a debut novel, Onion Tears. She did that as her dissertation for creative writing, and it's been a smash hit. It was shortlisted for all sorts of prizes. It's done extremely well. It was selected by Exclusive Books Homebrew last year. It's published by Penguin. I've known Shubnum for a number of years as a postgrad student, and I think I was possibly one of the first critical readers of her novel. It was her dissertation, and even as an exam piece, I believe you me, it was a hit. We've been together at the Franschhoek Festival and the Midlands Festival, so we're getting used to this, Shubnum. Yewande Omotoso, great pleasure to welcome you. Yewande is from a number of places, so the title Spaces and Places might be interesting. Born in Barbados, grew up in Nigeria, but has actually lived in South Africa longer than either of those two. So she's been in Cape Town since she was 12. A considerable time spent in South Africa. Studied architecture, and we'll discuss that. Also did a master's degree in creative writing, so we need to look at the interaction there. Bomb Boy is Yewande's debut novel, published in 2011, last year. Also done well, it's had good reviews. She's written other things, several short stories, including one I thought very powerful one called The Piano, which won second prize in the 2005-06 Power Women's Writing Competition. Yewande's love of space and structures, I think, is reflected not only in her work as an architect, but it's also evident in her writing. So that's a very brief bio for the two of them, but we welcome you and we look forward to hearing you read. And Shubnum's going to come up first, followed by Yewande, just to give you a little taste, and then we'll move into a discussion period. Okay, Shubnum, would you like to come up? Or stay there, whichever. Which do you like? Would you prefer to stay there and read from there?
Hello, everyone, again. Okay, this is one of the female characters traveling through India. But one day, while they were staying in the south of India, things changed. They had taken a boat cruise through the backwaters of Kerala, sailing the river at sunset. They waded through the water wearing unnecessary things like sun hats, mosquito repellents, and nausea patches, and doing typical tourist things like leaning over the side of the boat and exclaiming, a fish, I'm sure I saw one right there." The water was dark and frothy and weedy at its banks. They sailed past expensive hotels with flat green golf courses and pools with women in yellow bikinis sipping from coconuts under palm trees. And as they moved deeper down the river, they saw small houses near its banks, little wooden structures with crooked doors and shabby gardens. Clotheslines were strung between bushes, and naked children ran near the edge of the river. Some of them ignored the boats, others jumped excitedly and waved. In the twilight of the sinking sun, when the world grew dark and moody, she saw a woman sitting hunched at the edge of the river, scrubbing her washing. The woman paused and looked up at the boat. Her bright eyes and her weathered face seemed to say something to Sumaya. And Sumaya thought, what was this place? This ethereal, ancient, poor place, this dark, light place filled with wet earth and bird screeches, this place with naked babies who sucked on wet rags behind golf courses with coconut-sipping ladies. Why was it still here? Hidden between cities and trees, would it always be here? And it was then that Sumaya finally found some sort of affinity with India, some sort of beauty that she felt tender towards. She finally felt something that wasn't lack of interest or disgust, something that was understanding. You could be two things at once. You could be and you could not be. And as she watched men canoe their way across the river with a net of fish in their boat, she felt a silent sob at the back of her throat. You could be and not be. And it was there in Kerala, with its deep buzz of insects and rotting wooden boards and long coconut palms, that Sumaya found her something, her how to be. And it was there in Kerala, with its filthy waters that rose up in the darkness to smother her with its scummy silence, that Sumaya finally felt at ease. She would sit and stare at the still water from the hotel docks, next to the no swimming sign, next to the American man who had come to India to free himself from worldly desires, who did yoga stretches and hacked at his chest and spat copious amounts of green phlegm into the river that bubbled and added froth to the riverbank. She ate lots of fruit and grew sun-tanned. She sat cross-legged like the local Indians and let her hair dry in the sun. The sun was different here. It was fiery and intense. It brought out the color red in people's clothing and the color yellow under their skins. It burnt silver pans of chilies that were left out to dry. And as she lay in the sun and let her skin cook and let the heat enter her hair and her eyes and her fingers, she felt at one with the earth. She thought hot, strange-smelling, black-burning thoughts. She felt whole somehow. It was a long time before she felt that way again. When Sumaya had come back to the dry land and the wide sky, she had felt odd for a few days, almost longing for the bustle and noise of India's streets or for the sunlight, muddy river. Not this dry, quiet, cracked land in which people peeped at each other through the slit of their curtains or smiled at each other uncertainly before going back to their shopping at Pick and Pay. The colors were paler, the air had less electricity. People were formal and polite and said, "Oh, I'm sorry," if they accidentally banged into one another, whereas in India, they either told you to watch where you were going or thought nothing of it and continued with their pushing, as if they shouldn't be disturbed by bodies that were cut from the same cloth as them. Thank you.
I'm alive. I'm just going to do two things. There's a song that plays throughout the book, so I thought I would sing it. It's quite short, and then I'll read you a small piece. Babalawo mo wa bẹ̀bẹ̀ alugbinrin ogun tó ṣe fún mi lẹ́rẹ̀kan alugbinrin ó ní màmá fẹsẹ̀ kẹnu alugbinrin. Oni mama fọwọ́ kẹnu alugbinrin gbòǹgbò ló yẹ mí gèrè alugbinrin mo fọwọ́ kan bẹ́ẹ̀ mo fi kẹnu alugbinrin mo gbójú ọkùn orí gbẹ̀ngù alugbinrin babaláwo mo wá bẹ̀bẹ̀. So I thought that was really good because, you know, when you buy the book, When you buy the book and read it, you can know what it sounds like. Other people won't have that, so. So the story is called Bomboy, and the main character is Leke, and this is a scene between his parents, whom he never meets, and his father never gets to meet him either. Elaine ignored Oscar for 4 weeks after the first time he tried to kiss her. Summer was fully formed, and the sunshine set upon the campus, unrelenting and fierce. Evenings were still, and the ground radiated the warmth collected through the day back into the atmosphere. 8 p.m. on Friday, Oscar was still marking scripts at his desk, unwilling to go home to his empty house. Elaine knocked on his office door, uncertain he would be in, but hopeful. Yes. She opened the door and stuck her head through. A flash of unexpected rain had caught her, and she was dripping water onto the carpet. "Can I come in?" she asked, still standing at the door. She seemed shy, although they'd spent many nights in his office chatting until late. Oscar nodded a response, and Elaine shut the door behind her. She put down the ShopRite bag, which held a container of food for her supper. She leaned one hand on a bookshelf, while with the other she bent down and removed her shoes. It was getting dark outside, and the building was empty. "You're all wet," Oscar said, noticing the tremble in his own voice. Elaine shrugged. After she'd removed her shoes, she sat on the floor, facing Oscar, who was still sitting on his chair. He swiveled it out from his desk so that they were facing each other, with nothing in between them. She brought her knees up and removed her socks. "I'm sorry about the other day," Elaine said, as she then removed her cardigan. "You said you wanted to kiss me. I didn't mean," Oscar began. He stood up and sat down again, unsure where to look. His tongue in his mouth felt like the trunk of the tree outside his office, and his limbs were like its roots trapped under volumes of soil. She removed her vest and stood up so that she could step out of her corduroy trousers. The light in the room flickered. Elaine continued removing her clothes, one layer after the other. Oscar watched, intrigued, wondering what she was doing. When she was almost naked, in her bra and underwear, she walked towards him and took his hand. "This is all," she said. "I just wanted you to see me." all of me. She guided his hand along her body. Half of Elaine was beautiful. Look at me. There were two halves of her, half that was burnt, half that was not. The burnt skin was calloused and glistened, uneven in parts, as though it had once bubbled and then frozen in place. What happened? Oscar asked. Elaine shook her head. Doesn't matter. Does it hurt? Not anymore. Give me your hand. Oscar relinquished his right hand, which she guided along her body, moving from one side to the other, hard, thickened, burnt flesh to smooth, pale, freckled skin. Oscar pulled Elaine towards him into the chair. He whispered into her ear, "You're beautiful, all of you." They lay down on the long couch in the corner of Oscar's office and fell asleep, covering their bodies with the couch throw. A few hours later, when they woke up, the sky was purple. Elaine locked the office door. Oscar kissed her neck and her breasts. She sat astride him, and they made love. Thank you.
We've got a theme, spaces and places, and I thought we could maybe discuss a little bit about the places that both of you come from in a way, and you can translate that as you wish, and how do you feed those places into your novels? Yewande, do you want to go first, or Shubnum? Okay.
I think it's difficult to say, really. I mean, so I was born in Barbados, and I grew up in Nigeria, and I've lived here. And apart from Barbados, you know, Nigeria is in the novel, and South Africa is in the novel. But I don't think I set out to write about those places because I'm from them. But because I'm from them, I wrote about those places. I don't know if that makes sense. So it almost came the other way around. And so looking with hindsight, one notices that. For me, it's more the architecture. I find that I enjoy writing about immediate place and buildings and describing urban scenes. I enjoy that, and I suppose my training has taught me to look at space and form and volume. So being able to marry that now when I write, I enjoy that.
And Shubnum?
I don't actually set much in Durban, to be honest, and I think I wanted to do that more to challenge myself about writing about a new space. And like I in my reading, I spoke about India, and it was based a bit on when I went to India and how I related to being in that space. Initially, it wasn't a space I was comfortable with because I didn't feel like I belonged there. Like any other person who travels probably back to the indigenous country, it's you feel odd. You don't like. I felt like a wannabe Indian, you know, and people looked at you like, oh, she's one of those, you know, she left us. She's the one who left the country, and she can't even speak, because I can't really speak Urdu, and my mother and father are quite upset about this, but I blame them because they don't speak Urdu at home. But anyway, the thing is, so when I started writing the novel, I didn't expect to put spaces like India in there, but I think subconsciously it came into the novel, and being in a space where you're supposed to be comfortable, but you're actually a foreigner. Yeah.
And moving to the quite prosaic, but people quite like to know these kinds of things. If we're thinking spaces in terms of immediate spaces of work, what are your workspaces like? Are you one of those, or between the two of you, some people say they can, you know, sleep anywhere. Can you write anywhere? What are your workspaces like?
Well, for me, it has to be a computer. I think for everyone it's very personal, but for me it's a computer. And interestingly enough, when I was doing my master's in creative writing, my supervisor, Kobus Moman, who's here, I had done a chapter in one room, which I enjoy writing. It's a bright lit room, and then I can't remember, someone came vacuuming or something inside the room, and I had to go out, and I went into another room, and it was dark. There was no windows in that room. And when he was checking my work, he said, "Scrap this chapter." I mean, no, he doesn't say it like that there, but he said, "This is not your best work." And I had to leave it out. But he left the chapter that I'd written in the room where I was happy and I enjoyed, and not the room. So I really think the environment is important. I enjoy having open spaces, my computer with me. Usually what I like to do is I put everything onto the screen, not onto the page. So I just type whatever comes. And I think we're going to come to this in our discussion about doing architecture. It's like whatever feelings or whatever stories coming in me, I put it on the page. I don't look if it makes sense or anything. I just start writing, typing. Then later on, I go into it and try and sort it out and make some sense. But it's more or less like just throwing all the ingredients onto the page, splattering the paint on the canvas, and then working with it later. So that's how I work. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, slightly different in that I was studying part-time and I was working full-time as an architect, and I found I couldn't afford the luxury of needing to write in a particular place, or, I negotiated with my boss and she gave me an hour's lunch, so I would write in my hour's lunch, and if it was in the tea room or it was at my desk. And then, so I learned how to be quite flexible and not be too precious about where I wrote or what the conditions were, or who was talking or who wasn't talking. And I liked that, but I struggled with it was quite frenetic, like I'd have half an hour or 15 minutes. I couldn't wait for the muse, and, am I feeling it? I had to just punch it out, and sometimes I felt it was evident in the book. I still think it is, like it's a bit choppy. At home, I write at a dining table, and there's a television nearby, and a piano, and there's a window, and there's a train line.
Distractions.
There are distractions, but, for the past 10 days, I had the chance to be at a writer's workshop where we were in the valley, and there was nothing. And it was amazing. It was wow, But luckily, I think I've learned to manage both. Mm. Yeah.
What we discovered, which was quite interesting, the two of you together, we discovered that Shubnum could have been an architect. She, in fact, studied architecture. Yewande is an architect. And I wanted to ask you, what are the interrelationships? Both of you have gone on to do MAs in creative writing, but you've got that architectural, structural interest along the way. So my question to the two of you is, does creative writing speak to architecture or the other way around in your work? Is there something that leads into one into the other? I was looking on the internet and I found something that Yewande had said in an address to architects, and she was speaking about housing, and she said this: disregarding the broader context in which the house sits, the complex dynamics with its surroundings, disregarding that results in the production of individual houses with no relation to one another and none of the infrastructure around them that could really begin to impact on social change. And it made me think of your central character, Leke, and his extreme isolation. He doesn't have the social context. So, looping back to that question, creative writing and architecture, what's the link?
The other person that's an architect and a writer is Arundhati Roy.
Which we're very excited about.
I've read her.
Maybe there's a subgroup, yeah.
So there's a bunch of architects, and she's great because my dad, I was an architect and I despaired that I'd missed my chance to be a writer. And my dad bought me her book, The God of Small Things, when it came out. And the best part of the book was the cover at the back that said that she's an architect. For me, that was the best part because it was great news. It was like, okay, there's hope. But there might be a connection, and I'd be interested in what you have to say. But because architecture there's they say, do architecture, you have some mathematics in you or some sense of some technical side as well as an artistic side. And it is very methodical, the building of something, the putting together of something, and the foundation is just so, and you've got to do it in a particular way, and then what goes with that and what goes with that. And then the add to that structure and definiteness, the kind of the playfulness of an architect's idea, like whimsy. So, and maybe that's novel is the same. Like there's some whimsical idea, there's a notion, and then there's also the rigor, I guess, of what it is to put a story together that's tight enough and believable. So, I mean, I like the comparison. It'd be nice to know if my studies, my 8 years of architecture, will help me out when it comes to writing books. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
So I'm not actually an architect, and I only did 1 week of architecture.
Now the truth's out. The internet lies.
I mean, there is something interesting to say about that, in that I had come out of school and I didn't know what I wanted to study, but I knew I was a creative writing person, and my father is an architect. So I thought, well, I'm a creative person and my father's an architect. And I mean, he didn't have much of a say advice to give me on this. And I said, okay, well, I'll just do architecture and I'll see if I like it. And that's what he agreed to. And I did 1 week, and I knew this is not for me. Literally, I deregistered on the Friday. So we started on the Monday, and I deregistered on the Friday. I just knew. And it was because someone was eating ants in my class. No, there really was someone eating ants. There was someone on the first day, he's like eating ants off the table. I don't know why. But anyway, no, that wasn't why I left.
That's a short story.
But he really was. I came home traumatized. I left it because architecture it's the creativity that it has, but it also has a very much a technicality. I mean, your buildings, you can have the most beautiful building, but if you haven't built it well, it's going to fall down. And I'm not a technical person at all. I mean, growing up, we used to do school projects, and my father used to measure everything, I'm sure you know, like to the T. And I would just be like, oh, just cut it, just do it. Seriously. So when I saw them doing measuring and all these compass things and mathematical things, I said, this is not for me. This is not what I want. And I think it comes across, I mean, even in your writing, sort of the plotting and the technicalities, whereas I feel like with me, I just throw everything on the page. I don't plot my novels beforehand. I just sort of whatever's coming to me, I put it on there and throw it on, and that's how I write. And I think that is a reflection of, even my art, I just paint, I do a lot of finger painting as well. I just like to get into the grit of things, yeah.
Something else that's come up in interviews with the two of you has been around the question of identity, and I was really interested in something you said and read right now, Shubnum, and it related to something that Yewande had said in an interview a while ago. Yewande had said in an interview in Nigeria about Bomboy, one of the things I wanted to explore is the idea of identity and of a set of identity. This is African, this is not African. And Shubnum, you've just read something that said you could be and not be. So, and Shubnum, I think you'd also said something I found very interesting about identity. You said, in my case, being Indian and African, there was a sense of a mix, and you talked about it's almost overwhelming. So maybe could you two talk about identity in connection with your novels, whether they are African, Nigerian, South African, Indian? It's a question you've had before, but what do you think about it now?
I think with the Nigerian question there, sometimes there's this thing because the character's partly Nigerian, he's actually Nigerian, South African, his mother's South African. People think, are you representing Nigeria accurately? Is this a Nigerian you're representing? Or even the question is this an African that you're representing? So I think what I was trying to say was it's dangerous particularly now, but it's always been dangerous to try and say, this is an African. You're an African because your hair is such a way, or your clothes are such a way, or you speak a particular language. I think that's dangerous, and I was just protecting myself against people who might say, is that an authentic African person you've represented there? Or is that an authentic experience in Cape Town of a Nigerian that you've represented there? For somebody who, for me anyway, as a writer and writing fiction, you don't have to bear the burden of something like that. So that's what I think I was talking to, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think in writing you're always exploring identity. Your whole life you're always exploring who am I, what am I, because you're always changing all the time. And especially when you're young, I think you know, from a teenager, you want to know who am I or which culture do I belong to, because it's very important to know, you know, the rules of what you're in, and you need to classify yourself. It's very important. But as you get older, I think you start realizing that you don't need to classify yourself, and that it's actually almost a privilege to be sort of mixing your cultures up, that it's not a curse or anything, you know. I always say at home, before, in our house, it used to be the grandkids supporting South Africa, and my grandfather and them supporting India. You know, and it's changing. It really was like that. But as you get older, you start realizing, and I use that line in my book quite often, you can be and you cannot be. And it's something you accept by saying, I can be South African, I can be Indian, I can be all these things. And it's amazing that I can be all these things and that I can accept that I'm all these things. So that's a lot what the novel is an exploration of. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? Because you reminded me of, this thing of identity. I remember growing up in Nigeria, and then I was probably, maybe I was 6 or 7, and or 8 actually, and we went to London, and my grandparents were living there. And my parents sent me with one of the aunts and her children, and I was playing with, you know, the girls and so on. And there was this quiet moment on a staircase where one of the younger girls, whose parents were from Trinidad, looked at me and said to me, "You're black," you know. And it was the first time I realized that, you know. And she for me she was black, but you know, with hindsight, she was a lighter version of black. And I think things like that are very, for me, kind of dot my experiences, and coming to South Africa also and being reminded of the color that I am, but the meaning that what it means here, and you know, even as a 12-year-old, I couldn't always understand. But the weight of it, and the discomfort of the label that I suddenly had to take on, you know, in primary school. So I think those experiences, I agree with you, like this thing of having to fit into something, and if you don't, the problem of that is probably part of what the book deals with, without looking at it head on, through a story. Yeah.
And we might have covered this, but something I was really interested in that Shubnum had also said about Indian writers. You'd said, I wonder if there is a future for the Indian writer in South Africa, when increasingly we see in this country how similar our narratives are becoming. Surely, as our cultural pot melts further, we will have South African writers. I mean, is that possible, do you think? Are you hopeful about that?
Yeah, that was an answer in relation to the question saying, what do you think about the future of Indian writers? And I think because I'm an Indian writer, like I stand for the Indian writer. What is the future of Indian writers in South Africa? It's a very big question. And I mean, that is what I believe. It's increasingly, it's not anymore an Indian experience, and it's not anymore a white experience, because I mean, we have moved out of apartheid now, and increasingly our stories are becoming so similar. And I mean, generations to come in South Africa, Indians will not consider themselves a separate sort of race. We're all going to be South African. We're just taking a bit of time because we're coming right after apartheid, you know, slowly. But I mean, eventually, hopefully, that's the dream, that we all are South Africans, and there wouldn't be sort of one cultural narrative to separate them. Yeah.
And maybe you wonder, you would say a similar thing about, I mean, often you've been pigeonholed as a Nigerian writer, and yet you draw on so many other strands, as you're saying, and I like the idea of, in terms of setting, these two are very confusing in terms of setting. Shubnum does not set her stuff in Durban by and large, and Yewande's your setting is Cape Town, which is your experience for the last many years. So you've moved very much into a different space, thinking of our space-place idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I must say, I don't have a problem being called a Nigerian writer, or I mean, I'm a South African one here.
South Africa stroke.
You know, which is, that, for me, I don't think that's a problem. And maybe what needs to happen is a combination. Because I think what you're talking about is people being willing to identify as South African. But I think I enjoy the fact that there is, you know, as an Indian with Indian heritage at least, and that would always come through in what you write. You know, me with Nigerian or Barbadian or whatever. I mean, that's part of the joy and the
for the carpet.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but as the generations go down, I mean,
do you think it will disappear?
I mean,
wouldn't you want some of that to remain?
I know you would, obviously, but I mean, many generations down, it's not going to be as strong as, you know, you're going to look at, when your ancestors fought in the apartheid struggle, you know, something like that there. It would be more South African sort of history you'd be referring to.
Yeah.
Don't forget the cooking, please, Shubnum. Shubnum's book is full of cooking. Okay, maybe we've got a few minutes. It's very hard for us to see in terms of the house lights, or these lights, but are there some questions you'd like to start posing to our writers? I can't see a thing.
Yeah, I can't see it.
So the roving mic will have to find you and decide who's first. Is there anyone out there who wants to talk, ask anything? I see one hand at the back.
Yes, thank you very much for your reading. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to ask a question about the notion of the weight of color that was mentioned. And I wonder if the writer from the Cape would expand on that notion. You talked about coming to South Africa and you used that phrase, you had to deal with the weight of color. Could you explain that a bit more, please?
Answer now, or are you going to take a break?
Okay, are we going to take a few, or shall we take one at a time? What I can't see any more hands right now.
This one.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, maybe we'll take three, and then we'll have an answer. Roving Mike, are you anywhere near? You got that one, huh? Okay, yeah.
Okay, so by you saying that the other lady was referring to you as black, and you said because she was white, she was lighter black, are you referring to as a skin color or just her attitude?
Okay.
That's a can of worms. Okay, third question, and then...
Shubnum, this is a question for you, or maybe not a question as such, but actually when you were reading, and I actually enjoyed that, at some point I didn't feel like it was an Indian woman. It just felt like even me in India, like how I would feel about some of the things that you know, some of those experiences. So in essence, like what you were saying now, about it's maybe a couple of years down the line, it's just going to be really a narrative. It could be anybody just, you know, sort of writing on that. So maybe it's not a question, but to say I sort of got that from you reading your, yeah.
I'll comment on that.
Okay, maybe we should respond, and then we'll see if there's another round. I think we might have time for one more round.
Okay. Second question. No, I meant her skin color. Where's the guy? Short answer.
Yeah.
First question. Look, this is it's a dangerous thing to start to talk about. So I don't want to, I'm trying to be as clear as possible, but I probably won't be. So I think you need to put yourself in the body of a 12-year-old girl, which would be me. You need to take yourself to 1992 in South Africa, before the yes/no vote, and all of that. Then you need to get an understanding of what it would have been like for me to grow up in Nigeria for 12 years, in an amazing household, with a really strong sense of myself and who I am, and a real kind of joy, and then to arrive in 1992 South Africa as this 12-year-old girl. You know, it really was an experience for me, and it lasted about 4 years of dying. You know, my experience of those, you know, my family was amazing and a real source of comfort and friendship, but it was a sad time for a child, and the only way I can talk about it is that the weight. I hadn't lived in South Africa, so I didn't have the experience of other young black South African children or older black South Africans who went through really difficult times. So I can't, you know, I didn't suffer that. I wasn't in the struggle and all that. But it's almost like, you know, when you come into a room at the end of a heated argument between two people. So you come in, they've just argued, and the air, right? It's like I came into South Africa and it was hectic. Something had happened. I didn't really know what it was, you know, and that was my experience, and it played out, you know, in lots of teasing, in a lot of loneliness, in a lot of feeling lost, and you know, I would sit in the classroom and read because I was too terrified of the playground. I would call my mother, you know, bless her. I could talk to her for 30 minutes just to do something. It was the weight of color, like I was a color suddenly. I'd grown up me, and I came here and I became a black girl. Yeah, so that's, yeah.
I think we've got time for one last round before we have the break. The roving mic's finding the questions. Okay, is there one over there?
Yes, both of you writers, in your own way, have tried to resolve the issue of identity, of your own culture and, you know, living within a different culture. But I think basically art should go beyond this either or. It should enlighten more that as human beings we are the same. And you know, even like you are an African living in Africa, but you also had the same identity problem as Shubnum. So it's like, you know, different journeys, but everybody has to do the same struggle, even if you are living in your own country.
Yeah. But just to comment on the wording of that, I don't think we're trying to resolve the issues. It's more just like exploring the issues. You can never, I don't think resolve is the right, it's just more like...
Yes, that exploration everybody has to do, even when you are living in your own country.
Definitely, but by writing it and sharing it in literature, we're actually telling everyone else, well, it's the same experience we're all having. This is my experience, this is her experience, yeah. And
it's not a crisis. I mean, you know, I'm not in any identity crisis, or, oh my goodness, oh my... For me, it's a celebration. There's no,
yes.
I'm deeply, deeply, deeply feel blessed that I'm from all those places, that I've lived here, there's no confusion or crisis or, oh my goodness, that is not really how this whole identity thing.
Because that difficulty has brought me out.
Yeah, and it's not always been difficult. I mean, it's a joy. It's you know, I have family spread across the world.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a celebration, really.
Okay, well, maybe one more and then let's break. Oh, you okay? Okay, 1, 2, then it's done.
Evening, everyone. Evening, ladies in the front.
Evening.
I'm not really gonna ask a question, but I felt like I've identified with something. Growing up in a rural KZN, I was born in KZN, but my grandma was like a rich, different person. I was seeing people being banged around, and I made friends with a pen. And I think I'm gonna stick to that, considering that some can write even though they've studied something. I've gone for engineering, technical drawing, but I feel like whenever I'm bored, I need a pen. Whenever I've got something to cry on, maybe the pen won't laugh at me, because whenever I'm writing something, there's nobody seeing me what I write. If I'm angry, if I'm like that. So I think what that lady just said now, writing is like telling someone won't give you a problem. So if I'm going to write someday, I don't think I'll be going for interviews, because if I write something, the pen won't ask me anything. The paper will say, why did you write that?
And I think we've got a final comment in the front here.
Yeah, I've noticed you are both women writers, and women do, and women do, by virtue of being women, occupy particular places and spaces in the world, and I think in literature, and I think when it comes to their writing being taken seriously, they do occupy particular places. So I'd like to find out from you whether the fact that you are women writers has any kind of impact on what you write, what you choose to write.
Well, I write a lot about women in my story, and I often say it's because my mother has 6 older sisters. I have 3 older sisters, so I'm very much in a woman environment, and I don't know if I was a man with 3 older sisters and a mother having. I mean, even if I was a male with 3 older sisters and my mother having 6 older sisters, the way I would still be writing about a woman's perspective, I think. I'm pretty sure. You know, I mean, even my dad's, the way he's brought me up is to always look at justice and always look at presenting things in the fair way. So if I was a guy even, I'd probably be presenting that, hey, these women's lives are very difficult. Indian women, well, I mean, I know this community, so I can say it. I mean, it's all in every community. Their lives are very difficult. The kinds of things they have to do, the way they have to bring up the children, look after their husbands, it's their own identity in a way is getting lost. So I don't know if it's because I'm a woman, but I think more because of my environment. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From my side, I mean, my character is male, my main character. And that wasn't deliberate or anything. I mean, that's just the story I wanted to tell. But I think that you know, certain things concern a person, so and they want to write about it or share about it, and sometimes those might be things that involve women in society or the issues that go with that and gender, and sometimes it might not. So I have a sense of freedom at being able to write about that if that's something that concerns me in the moment, as well as all the other millions of things one could write about.
Okay, I think on that positive and free and easy note, we'll call it a day for this session. I think there's a 15-minute break, and then we're back for the next. Thank you very, very much to our writers.
Thanks a lot.